Emily Parker was a brilliant college student. By day, she attended classes. By night, she worked 2 part-time jobs. Every dollar she earned went toward one thing, her father's hospital bills. One evening, the doctor gave her heartbreaking news. Your father needs surgery within a week. The insurance won't cover all the costs. Emily looked at the estimate. She had no idea how she could afford it. That same night, while leaving work in heavy rain, she accidentally bumped into a man outside a hotel. His name was Alexander King. He was one of the country's youngest billionaires, though Emily had no idea who he was. She quickly apologized. I'm so sorry. Alexander smiled. No harm done. They ended up talking for hours in the hotel cafe. Emily shared her worries about school, work, and her father's illness. Alexander listened without mentioning his wealth. As the night ended, he gave her his business card. If you ever need career advice after graduation, call me. Emily smiled. Thank you. The next morning, social media exploded. A tabloid published photos of the two leaving the hotel together with the headline, Billionaire spends the night with mystery college student. Rumors spread instantly. Emily was shocked. She had only spent the evening talking with Alexander after missing the last bus home and waiting safely in the hotel lobby during the storm. When Alexander saw the false story, he immediately called his legal team. This headline is false, he said. We're addressing it. Before Emily could even process what was happening, Alexander himself arrived at the hospital. I heard about your father's surgery, he said. I'd like to help. Emily looked at him in disbelief. But, why? Alexander smiled gently. Because kindness shouldn't depend on rumors. Just then, someone else walked into the room. Holding an envelope that would change everything. To be continued, the hospital room fell silent. An elderly man in a gray suit stepped inside carrying a sealed envelope. Alexander smiled. Mr. Harris, you're here. Emily looked confused. Who is he? Alexander replied. He's the chairman of the King Foundation. Mr. Harris handed the envelope to Emily. Your application for emergency medical assistance was reviewed this morning. Emily frowned. I never submitted one. Alexander smiled gently. I did. She slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a letter that read, The King Foundation has approved full funding for your father's surgery and post-operative care. Emily's hands began to shake. I don't know what to say. Alexander replied. You don't have to repay us. When I was your age, someone helped my family when we had nothing. I promised that if I ever had the chance, I'd do the same for someone else. Tears filled Emily's eyes. You barely know me. Alexander smiled. I know enough. You worked 2 jobs. You stayed in school. And you never asked anyone for money. That tells me a lot about your character. A week later, Emily's father underwent successful surgery. His recovery went well. The false tabloid story was also corrected after hotel security footage confirmed that Emily and Alexander had simply spent time talking in the cafe before she safely waited for transportation during the storm. At a press conference, a reporter asked Alexander, Why didn't you ignore the rumors? He answered, Because false stories can hurt innocent people. And kindness should never become gossip. Months later, Emily graduated at the top of her class. At the graduation ceremony, Alexander was invited as the keynote speaker. He smiled at the audience. Success isn't measured by how much you own. It's measured by how many people can stand again because you offered them a helping hand. Emily smiled from the front row. For the first time in months. Her future was no longer defined by fear, but by hope. To be continued, 1 year later. Emily had graduated with honors and accepted a position at King Foundation as a healthcare program coordinator. She loved her work because every day she met families facing the same struggles she had once faced. Her father had fully recovered and returned to the small woodworking shop he loved. One afternoon, Alexander stopped by Emily's office. "Do you remember the first night we met?" he asked with a smile. Emily laughed. "The rainstorm? And the terrible coffee in the hotel cafe?" Alexander smiled. "I've had better." They both laughed. Their friendship had grown slowly over the past year. There had been no games. No secrets. Only honesty and trust. One evening, Alexander invited Emily to the hospital where her father had been treated. Outside the entrance stood a brand new building. A large sign read, "The Hope Medical Assistance Center." Emily looked at him in surprise. "You built this?" Alexander shook his head. "We built it." He pointed toward the entrance. "Your story inspired the project. No family should have to choose between saving a loved one and paying the bills." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You turned one act of kindness into something that will help thousands." Alexander smiled. "You reminded me why success matters."